So this is something I've been thinking about lately. Can Joe Biden win through sheer, unadulterated negativity? I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. You are watching Americana X Newswatch. This is your common sense perspective news commentary show. It'll give you a little bit of a break from the weekly news cycle. It's so heavily biased by liberal outlets. This show is for conservatives that are looking for some refreshing answers to what's happening behind the sensationalized headlines. If you're new here, welcome to the show. If you've been here before, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Also, share this show out to people in your network so that we can continue to encourage a Christian conservative perspective more and more to a larger and larger audience so that we can encourage a greater America. Today on the show, we are talking about negativity versus positivity. You know, I've been thinking about, kind of going back and forth in my mind on this lately. Is it possible that Joe Biden can win this election through unadulterated negativity? Because that is what the whole entire news cycle has devolved into. Just constant, nonstop negativity. And literally, I'm having a hard time identifying what position he actually takes on things, because he goes back and forth. He waffles around so much on almost every issue, depending on the audience that this guy speaks to, right? He'll come in kind of soft on a subject. Another time he'll talk really hard and abrasive about the subject. Sometimes he'll just take the opposite position of what he held before. And you're like left going, okay, so what is consistent in this guy's message? Well, he hates Donald Trump, like most of the liberal party, and the liberal entertainment, and the liberal media, and our education system. Oh, that's what they're really for. It's a platform of negativity. They're just angry. They're just rage-filled, right? So what I did was I made a quick little bullet list here of all the news stories that have been in the cycle, not all of them, a number of the news stories that have been out there just this week. I'm just going to go through them here pretty quick so we kind of get an overview of what I'm getting at here. The point that I'm getting at, this concept, this idea of negativity driving the news cycle. Okay, so let's look at it. We had two ridiculous town hall interviews in place of the second presidential debate in this last week. One of them, full of softball questions, treating Joe Biden really sweet and not really putting him to task on anything. In contrast, the other town hall, very negative towards Donald Trump, very cruel and just harsh in their treatment of him, and they took him to task on almost everything, right? Let's look at the next one. Joe Biden in the hot seat over corruption allegations. This has been for months and months. We've been seeing indicators that there is corruption in Joe Biden's past, connected to his family, connected to the Ukraine, connected, it really is ridiculous because so much of the media just either ignores it, or what we've seen just this week from our big tech, our tech oligopolies in San Francisco, hiding, burying the story of Joe Biden's corruption. But then what are they doing on the other side? Promoting and favoring constant negative coverage of Donald Trump. We seeing a theme here? Are we seeing a consistent narrative arising? Here's another one. Joe Biden back in hiding from the press and the scrutiny until Thursday's debate. What does the press do? They don't even hardly talk about it. They don't see it as odd that this guy is going into his house and hiding while the news cycle, I think he's hoping that he can stay in his house long enough for the news cycle about his corruption in his son's computer that's leaked out into the world until that blows over. It's like, I'm just going to hang out in my house until you guys get done sweeping this under the rug. And then I'll come out and party on the rug and do a dance. What's another one? Donald Trump continues to hold daily rallies in different states to overwhelming enthusiastic support. I mean, you've seen this. If you're blind, you still hear the cheers. Okay, you can't miss what's going on with these Donald Trump rallies right now. Of course, the news wants to downplay that. But actually, one of the rallies that Donald Trump did just this last week was in my hometown of Muskegon, Michigan. Shout out to my peeps in Muskegon. I actually have a bunch of family back there still. It's actually the city that I was born in. So I got a soft spot in my heart there. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the point that I'm getting at here by looking at all of these, just these bullet points of stories that have been in the news this past week, is the theme that I'm seeing again and again is negativity when treating Donald Trump and basically ignoring anything on the Biden side. Sometimes there's some positive comments made about Biden in the mainstream news, but if there's not anything positive to say, there's just nothing said at all. When it comes to Donald Trump, it's all negativity. So it leads me to this point here. Very simple point. Democrats are the party of negativity. Republicans are the party of positivity. And I was like, could it be that simple? Let's put that to the test. Let's think that through a little more. If that's true, then the media and also big tech, which are very heavy liberal leaning institutions, they would equal all negative news all the time for Republicans or for people of conservative values. Or if they're not giving it negative press, they're suppressing it and not highlighting anything on the conservative side that might be positive. Just highlighting the negative. And this got me thinking about the fact that the media has actually been very negative, had a very heavy negativity bias for my entire life. 30 or 40 years. It's just been nonstop, relentless negativity. Why? Because we all know this. Negativity gets people to tune in, gets them to watch through the commercial break. And now in today's world, gets the clicks, gets the eyeballs to view a little bit longer online, da-da-da-da-da. But it's all driven by this negativity thing. They saw that it worked and they're doing it, but it really does have a heavy liberal bias, and it's more apparent today than it's ever been before. You could say, you could make an argument in the 80s and 90s that all the liberal bias news was, it was kind of even-handed. It was in the middle of the road on things. They're just calling it as they see it. They're just seeing it for what it is, and that's why they're being negative about it. You could kind of make that argument, but in today's world, it literally is very liberally biased, and we're seeing the evidence of it more and more and more. At any rate, what we're seeing now is a brainwashing that's been the result of 30 or 40 years of marching through all of our major institutions. And as a result, there's a sort of cascade of effects that come from that, but one of them is that the narrative has formed that everything in our culture is just so negative. Everything in America is bad. And it has created a segment of our young generation. I don't know what the percentage is, but there is a segment of our young Americans that now act out of this heavy negativity bias. We're seeing it right now in our major cities. It's been happening now for months. This is an election year. I think that has something to do with it. But these young adults, they think that the righteous and moral thing to do is act out of this negativity bias. Rioting, causing violence in our streets, crime, looting, arson, attempted murder, and in some cases, straight up murder. And this is motivated by their exposure to liberal entertainment, liberal politicians, liberal educators, liberal media, all pumping this heavy, steady diet of negativity into their brains. All of our cultural institutions, dominated by liberals, are focused on highlighting what is negative and ignoring what is positive, or just suppressing it or ignoring it. So the question I keep coming back to is this going to work? Is it possible that that could work? The strategy that they're playing on right now, the one they've been building for 30 plus years. Can Joe Biden win this presidential election by simply hoping that people hate Donald Trump enough to vote for him? In other words, did the mainstream media educate and fully indoctrinate our young people enough to blindly vote for a candidate that is just completely about negativity? That's the question. Did our entertainment program them well enough? Did our media, did our news, did our education system program our youth as they're becoming adults now and voting, and they're part of this election, they're part of the voting population of America? Did they properly indoctrinate them, brainwash them enough with their negative bias that these people will vote for Biden no matter how bad of a candidate he is? Because let's face it, he does not seem to stand for a whole lot. So wishy-washy on every issue. Like I said earlier in the video, sometimes he'd be speaking from the podium and he will have a very impassioned position he holds on some issue. A few days later, speaking on the same issue, he'll be real soft on it. In fact, you won't even know what he really believes about the issue. And you're like, who is this guy? What does he actually believe? But they're counting on people just saying, well, look, the other guy's so bad, so vote for me. That's what they're counting on right now. Very cynical, very negative. All right, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. I had a conversation the other night with my mom. This always makes me laugh whenever I think of this kind of thing. I have a friend of mine in college. He had a joke that he would do when we were roommates in college. He would say, and then my mom said, which is like the least cool thing. It's the least cool thing you can set up what you're about to say with. So we would always joke about that. And then my mom said, but you know, in this case, I was having a conversation with my mom the other night, so it's applicable to here. This has actually happened. Okay, so we were discussing how we as Christians are encouraged by the Bible to focus on what is positive. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? And I think a lot of Christians consciously know, yeah, we're supposed to focus on what is positive. Yeah, I get that. I'm with you, right? But I don't think they see just how insidious it's been, the influence of the culture on their regular mindset, their day-to-day way of thinking about the way they're moving through the world. So I'm going to be kind of talking a little bit about the insidious nature of negativity and how it kind of worms its way in. I'm going to start with a Bible verse. This is actually a Bible verse that my mom reminded me about the other night. It's Philippians 4:8. It's a famous Bible verse for anybody that's already a born-again Christian, but I'm going to read it to you here just in case you've never been exposed to it before. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. This is Philippians 4:8. Let's think about that just for a second. Brothers and sisters, that's everybody, unless you're one of the sexes in between, but this is talking about primarily just two of the sexes. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely. Okay, so we're supposed to focus on what is noble, what is right, what is pure, what is lovely, what is admirable. We're supposed to think about these things. I don't think that's to say that we don't ever have empathy for people that are going through some sort of suffering or people that are downtrodden. I don't think that there's not a moment in time where we can't take a break from this to address some real suffering in the world or express empathy for people. But I think what it's getting at is you want a lion's share of your time. You want most of your mind to be devoted to whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, whatever's admirable. Think about such things. Whatever's excellent, whatever is praiseworthy. These are all positive things, you guys. The pushback I'll get a lot of times here in Los Angeles is from non-Christians primarily, but even Christians will give me pushback on this, because they have been somewhat duped by the politically correct narrative of the day and the kind of fashionable BLM platform. I hate to say it, it is what it is, Those words, Black Lives Matter, they're very persuasive. They may not know anything about what the organization is doing behind it, but the Christians I meet, they're, all on board with those three words. I am too, by the way. Just purely the three words, Black Lives Matter. Yes, I agree. Perfect. Yes. But then the baggage that comes along with the organization that loads up in behind those three words, that's where I begin to take issue. Because it's actually a humanist, Marxist organization. Well, humanism, that's more akin to atheism. So why would I, as a Christian, want to align myself with an atheist, sympathetic organization? Doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Anyways, I didn't want to get stuck on that. We're talking about positivity versus negativity today. So let's kind of stay on point here. So the argument that people will make to me is, Greg, we should be focusing on all the suffering, and then we should focus on feeling guilty and feeling bad as a result of the suffering that other people go through. And I'm like, well, that's just a very privileged position to be operating from. You have that much extra energy? I wish I had that much extra energy. But I think it is sort of a cascade effect of people they didn't have to go through enough suffering in their own life, so they are carrying a certain amount of sort of collected guilt of just not having experienced enough suffering in their own life. They just had it so good, So regardless of the person's ethnic background, it is possible for those people to experience a high level of abundance in life. And I say, great. I think people that don't have to go through suffering, it's a good thing. And yes, if you want to express empathy for others, that's good too. But I don't think that God wants us to sacrifice focusing on what is excellent and what is praiseworthy, what is noble, what is good, what is positive, so that we can, virtue signal on the other side. I don't think he wants us to do that. At any rate, I do think that a lot of people are looking for a way to virtue signal within the popular culture. And a lot of Christians even fall victim to this. Focusing on all the disadvantaged people of the world and then letting that dominate their thinking and subsequently their actions. In a way, sort of marinating in the suffering of all the people they see around them. I don't know if this is what their intention is, but I think the net result oftentimes is by focusing on the negative and focusing on how one group is disadvantaged and suffering and then you yourself buzzing with a type of existential negativity vibe, a morose kind of melancholy. This is not getting any of us anywhere. I want you to hear me on that. Somehow, I think they, in their mind, believe that if they are experiencing distress over other people's suffering, this somehow is a fix to the problem. It's not a fix to the problem, you guys. We feel bad about people that are disadvantaged in other countries that don't have what Americans have. Particularly, white Americans, because that seems to be the cause of the day or the narrative of the day. We feel bad for poor inner city communities. A lot of those are black communities. And we walk around feeling bad about them, and we think that this is somehow helping. I think that in many ways the liberal psychology is built almost entirely on the premise of identifying disadvantaged and suffering groups, then feeling sorry for those disadvantaged groups, and then feeling bad about themselves that they have more than that group has. So I guess this makes them what? One of the good guys because they're feeling bad about the group that has less than them? Doesn't come out in the wash for me. Doesn't work for me. The truth of the matter is, everybody is suffering from some form of suffering on some level or another. Rich people they experience suffering in life too. Upper middle class people, middle class, whatever your socioeconomic background, whatever your race, whatever your creed, whatever country you moved here from or your family moved here from eventually or originally, everybody experiences suffering. It's what we do with it. It's how we own it. It's how we surrender it where there's a real solution. It's not holding it and obsessing about it until it makes us either live in melancholy morose or run out in the streets and cause violence and burn things down and destroy other people's property and businesses. You see, those are very negative expressions of what to do with that information that we're holding in our head, or we can surrender it. There's been suffering in the generations of my own family. Okay? So I don't particularly talk about this a lot on my show, but I thought today, in spirit of Donald Trump coming out and giving his really positive, very great rally in Muskegon, Michigan, I might spend a little bit of time here today sharing a little bit of my heritage or a little bit of my family's story. Okay, so I was raised by a mother and father that overcame the suffering and the trauma in their life to experience happiness themselves. I had role modeled love and happiness within my home. Not even as a child, I wasn't even aware of the trauma and suffering that both my mom and my dad had experienced in their youth. My mom, I'm thinking about her right now because I was just on the phone with her the other night. She consistently expressed the importance of having a relationship with Jesus and then having God as a heavenly Father that would help her overcome the deep wounds that she had in her youth and her teen years. She had some good role models too. My great-great-grandmother, her grandmother, helped her see God as a heavenly Father that she could focus on instead of focusing on what was going on in the home. My mom is one of the most positive people anybody in her circle knows. Anybody I know personally, she's very positive. She doesn't sit around and wallow in her own suffering all day long. She's living Philippians 4:8. And I'm not going to tell this part of the story here to somehow garner sympathy. That's not why I'm going here with this, all right? But I'm going to tell you a little bit of my mom's story here. This is not to generate more of a collective negative vibe, right? I don't want other people to go out and think negative thoughts as a result of this. Rather, I want to share this story with you as an encouragement. An encouragement to how to overcome adversity in life. How to experience joy and happiness in this life in spite of being disadvantaged in facing hardship and struggle. Okay, so a little bit of my mom's story. She was raised in her formative years in a 2-bedroom house with 8 people living in it. This was in Muskegon, Michigan. Muskegon, Michigan's never been an extremely wealthy area. But especially as the industrial age was beginning to decline, it became a depressed area. The weather's not great in Michigan in the winter, okay? So not only is the sky always gray and you're kind of depressed through the winter, but they're living with very little money in a 2-bedroom house with 8 people. My mom's parents, her and her sister and her 4 brothers, all in a 2-bedroom house. They didn't have working plumbing, or the plumbing partially worked or something. But my mom would wash her hair as a teenager into a bucket. You have to take that bucket, even in the freezing cold winter of Michigan. If you live in Midwest, you know what I'm talking about. She had to go out the back and dump out the water out in the snow. The toilet in their house would clog up and it would stink. It'd be this rancid stench, sewage smell throughout the house. They'd have to manually unplug it and dump it out and take it outside and get rid of it somehow. My mom's stepfather was abusive. A lot of ways he was formed in his generation. He was in the army, so it became fashionable for him as a young man to get drunk with all his army buddies and just kind of have that real, just harsh way of moving through the world. And as a result, he became a guy that was abusive to the people in my mom's family, the members. My mom had to watch her mom be abused. Imagine the trauma that goes along with that. You're living in a poor community where the weather is awful and it snows and it's freezing cold. And you're living in a 2-bedroom house with 8 people. I know there's people that are suffering out there in the world. I know that right now we've spent 2020 really celebrating the heck out of the suffering of black people. There's other groups that are suffering in America right now too. There's poor groups of every race. There's groups that are suffering of different ethnic backgrounds, right? There's Indian Americans that suffer. There's Asian American groups that are suffering. Right now, today, we've got Armenian Americans that are fighting for Armenians that are suffering on the other side of the world. Yes, there's suffering in the world. So what do? Do we just focus on the suffering of every small group we can find and drive ourselves crazy until our head blows up over how much suffering there is in the world? No, that is not what God tells us to do with all of that suffering. He says to surrender it to Him and to see Him as your Heavenly Father, as an ideal to submit yourself to. And then He says in Philippians 4:8, focus on what is excellent and what is praiseworthy. Focus on the positive. People that know me, every time they see me, every time I talk to people on the phone, they ask me how things are going. I say, I'm doing great. Things are going well. I choose that to be my state. You can ask anybody that knows me. Every time they talk to me, things are going great. I love life. Life is good. If all we're going to do is focus on all the different groups in America and abroad that are suffering and then create narratives about how bad America is as a result of that, we are missing the point. We are just going to live in perpetual rage. And we're going to miss the joy of living in happiness. We're going to miss it. My point is that there are families that are experiencing suffering and having been marginalized in America. There are communities that experience all this, I guess you'd say, disadvantaged way of having experience here in America. And this crosses racial lines. And I agree that we should work to actually fix these issues. I agree with that. What I do not agree with is that the solution is somehow linked to this collective anger and rage and madness about the whole thing. It's really misguided to believe that screeching and having rage and protesting and rioting and creating arson and committing crimes and destroying other people's businesses in our cities is somehow going to bring about a fix. That will not bring about a fix. In fact, the starting point is the exact opposite, you guys. The secular atheist religion has got it wrong. And they're steeped in negativity, and that is what is being provided by the liberals right now. I think you guys see it yourselves. I think you see it in your communities around you right now. You know what I'm talking about. The tide's beginning to turn, you guys. The population of America is beginning to catch on. More and more and more Americans across the United States are seeing where liberal negativity that basically stokes rage to motivate people to vote for them, that's all a dead end. And more people are seeing that that is a dead end. Focusing on positivity and being constructive is starting to become cool again. How do we know it's becoming cool again? Little indicators popping up even this week. Let's talk about 3 of them right now. Celebrities. You know when you see celebrities starting to come out and say things that we may be seeing a tide turn on what is cool. If a celebrity starts talking about it, there's something that's in vogue, okay? Let's talk about what happened this week. I won't go deep into their stories. Maybe I will in a future video. I'm just going to quickly mention their names, okay? One of them, Ice Cube, came out this week. What was he talking about? Focusing on positivity. Who else came out this week? 50 Cent. What is he doing? He doesn't want to participate in the negative liberal party anymore because their agenda and their initiatives are all motivated by a negative premise. He's going for something more positive. He's moving away from the negative tax plans that are basically just to reverse whatever Donald Trump did. More cynical rage, motivating people to come up with policies that are bad for people because they just want to do the opposite of what the other guy did. 50 Cent sees it. He's making the pivot. Who else? Just this week, a book was launched by Matthew McConaughey. What's it about? Being constructive. What is being constructive? Building up. What's the opposite of building up? Tearing down. What's the party of tearing down right now? What's the party of building up? I'll leave it up to you to figure that out for yourself. The point is that there is something coming in vogue right now. More and more people are catching on. Positivity is where it is at, you guys. People are starting to get it. They're seeing the starting point of positivity being a better alternative. Optimism is a better alternative to negativity and pessimism. Living in joy, having happiness, and coming from a peaceful place to originate solutions to problems is always going to render better results. So it's my take right now that Joe Biden will not be able to win this election purely on negativity. I just don't think he can do it. I wonder, taking it a step further, if the Democrats will ever be able to run on negativity and rage again. I just don't know. I think that something's going to break in 2021, and they're going to have to start coming up with a new strategy. It's possible that our future elections that we'll see from Democrats, they will actually find a few substantive issues that are based on American excellence and positivity, and then maybe they'll win an election. If they can find just a couple of issues they can take back from Donald Trump that has some kind of connection to something positive on some level and just stand on those. And part of it will have to be maybe recapturing a sense of some sort of American patriotism. But right now, they're way off the mark. I think that they've already lost 2020. But we'll see how it goes. It's not a full prediction there. It's just kind of like speculating possibility of what we could be seeing coming next. My prediction right now for November, I think we're going to see Republicans win big in this election, down the ballot. Biden and the rest of the negativity, rage-baiting Democrat Party, they're not going to know what hit them. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section if you agree with what I'm saying here. Do you agree that the general populace is beginning to catch on to this positivity vibe more and more and more? And they're beginning to see less value in the negativity narrative that's been sold to them. Let me know in the comments section. Until next time, this has been Americana X Newswatch. I've been Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. We're going to see you again in just a few days. Wishing you guys a great week, and we'll see you soon.